And so then, transitioning to kind of building out Lawtrades, right? And this is something that always fascinates me because we work with very early stage founders. I guess the process by which you take an idea to a company and how you start kind of filling in those foundations. So yeah, I mean, maybe we can kind of start at the top, right? So when you had this idea, what was the problem that you saw and you were trying to solve?
Yeah, I mean, I think like every year that your startup is still in business, you get deeper and deeper and deeper with the problem. It's never usually like this is the problem and it just sort of stays as that problem because there's always all these like little problems and then there's also these like big existential problems that sort of develop just by the sheer nature of being in business for a long-ish period of time. But for me at the time, when I was graduating law school, I was pretty much graduating into one of the worst legal job markets in like the last like 50 or 60 years. Like this was the time period when like everybody was applying to law school. It was just like, law schools were making tons of money. They were accepting literally anyone and everyone. You could have like the worst LSAT score and still get into like a decent school. But then no one really cared afterwards when everyone was graduating with six-figure debt. Like, hey, like now that we have all these law students, are there even enough legal jobs for them to like pay off their debt? And that was like a little bit of like a breaking point for me, where in all honesty, I was just like, I'm probably not going to get hired after I graduate. So I need to do something like with what I've learned thus far in life. And part of it was like, how do I build a platform that helps more lawyers get hired? Because why is it that the only way that you can sort of make money as a lawyer is if you work at this law firm, which is this model that has been created 100 years ago and has never been innovated since? Why do you need to immediately graduate law school and work for somebody else when we have the internet, right? Which allows you to have the same infrastructure, theoretically, if you build that out with software, as a physical law firm, and then be able to like manage, grow, and scale your own law practice in your own terms. So it started from that fear of like, I'm never going to get a job. And look, there's all these other people that are probably not going to get a job. So why don't I think of a model that makes it equitable, that creates an open legal system that allows people who have the law degree to get connected with people that are actually looking for legal help. And then I'll build out a little payment processing layer to get both sides paid. And I'll take a small little cut from that success fee of it. So it started from fear, actually.
But I see the vision, right, of kind of making, I guess, trying to open up a very kind of closed kind of industry and I guess some way of working, which the internet helps, to do a lot in other sectors as well when it comes to democratization and I guess Uberization. So I see the vision, but it's a big vision. And so, how did you go about kind of taking those initial steps? How did you go about kind of testing the idea?
Yeah. So it's a big vision, but it was very practical in the early days. So before I had started Lawtrades, which was at like my last year of law school, I started another. I feel like I can't even call it a company because it was just a thing. It was a product that I built on the internet that was one of the first apps on the Facebook App Store. And it basically allowed people to customize their Facebook cover photo when they announced like in 2012, 2013, cover photo. So I was like, okay, let me build an app that has like hundreds of thousands of different like Justin Bieber, nature, coffee, inspirational quote cover photos. And you click it and it automatically changes it on your profile and then it posts in your timeline that, hey, I got this from myinfocoverphoto.com. So that was the first like plunge into building internet products. It's like I just wanted to build a simple tool that other people would find it useful. That business ended up, like turning into like a decent six-figure business while I was still in school. That gave me the confidence to sort of like be like, hey, I could probably do this again and do it even bigger because it's just pixels on a screen and you're removing a bunch of steps in the process of something that traditionally would take a copy and paste, a crop and upload. So I sort of employed that framework, that mental model to like, how can I remove steps within legal? And obviously you can sort of go really deep into the rabbit hole of changing the entire system, but it ultimately started with a landing page and a single page and had two buttons. One button said, I'm a lawyer, I can give help. One button said, I'm a person and I need legal help. And people would click on it, they would put their emails and I would just connect them together. And that's it. That was the entire idea. That was the entire sort of validation. And then all these other things came afterwards when I was like, do people want to meet lawyers on the internet and transact with them, even if they didn't meet them in person would drive to their law office or whatever. So that was the early kind of validation sort of thing. But I would say even more, because now all you hear about is MVPs and like it needs to be this, and like it was just fun. It was just fun. It was just that's it. You know, like I had an actual web page that I can say that I made, and whether it succeeded or didn't, I didn't really matter, because that was already like so different than what most other people were doing. And one of my sort of common themes is I hate doing the thing that everyone else is doing. We'll probably hear about that later on. But that was like success to me. So practically start small, quick landing page. More sort of like, I guess philosophically, like gravitate towards what's different, what's naturally fun to do.
So you were literally just getting this in your inbox, and then were you just kind of messaging people saying, hey, you know, lawyer X, client Y, meet each other, see what you can do, or yeah, I'm just very curious. Like, and was this on a spreadsheet or?
So the early V1 was just like drop in your emails, and it just like collects it on this CSV file that I would download at the end of each day and like look at like, was there even anyone that even like signed up? Version 0.2 was we added a few questions. So after you put in your email, you were like, okay, like what is your, if you're a lawyer, what's your practice area? Where do you live? How can you help? If you're a client, what's your legal issue and where do you live? And like, you know, what would be a good outcome for you or whatever. So once we had that data, then it was just a matter of like connecting lawyers with the right practice area, the clients with the right practice area and the type of question. And we would just introduce them over email, and that's it. And I didn't think about how to make money off of that. I didn't think about like, you know, like a product. It was just purely like, for the longest time in the early days of Lawtrades, we just sat around making email introductions. So many email introductions that it was just painful. But all of that, again, just like it was very low cost. It was quick and easy to do. And it still added value to people without us having to raise millions of dollars and build this product and find product market fit. And like, it's just like, all we were doing was connecting people. That's essentially what a marketplace is. And that's essentially what most internet products do. It's connecting people that I've never met before in real life. So that was like the second check off of like, okay, ask a question, then connect them.
Yeah, and so I'm just curious, like which came first, right? So when did you start kind of trialing out revenue models, figuring out whether or not, okay, well, you've got something, you're creating value. How do you then go about value capture versus when you, okay, then you've also got the vestiges of a company. Okay, now let's go to an accelerator program. Let's start kind of formalizing it. I'm curious, you know, which came first, or did they work in tandem?
One common theme is it always, for me, is proving it for myself first, and then going and getting other people involved. And that includes an accelerator, investors, other employees. So what came first is we figured out a way to generate revenue. Even if that was like $100, you know, for the month, that was at least something that we could prove to ourselves, because we were always just like, you know, we don't want to bring in more people if we think that it's going to be a failure. Like, I want to be able to look someone in the eye and tell them this is going to be a big enough business where you are going to get a return off whatever capital that you invest. And honestly mean that, and not just sort of like do it in a way where just like, we're going to, and that's okay too. Sometimes people raise money to kind of figure it out. And there was a lot that we figured out because we raised money, but I just didn't want to do that the earliest of days, because I knew my own sort of naiveness with that. So we figured out a way to monetize it, which was the first time, this first iteration was like selling a subscription to lawyers to be part of this like list. And we charged them $300 per year for that. That eventually generated, you know, a few $1,000 a month, maybe like $2,000 to $3,000 a month, which was like more than enough for 2 people to split to like keep us motivated and buy some dinners. We were both living at our parents' house at the time. I think he was still in law school, but I was living at home at the time. My parents were just like bugging the crap out of me. Why am I not taking the bar? But that first like $2,000, $3,000, and we were able to use that money to like, you know, reinvest it back into the business and hire another sort of like product person, and, you know, go out for dinner and using that money. That felt really good to us. So the first step was proving it to us, which is like, will people give money to pay for the service? And then the second part came, okay, let's go like find some accelerators that that will, you know, allow us to sort of like make this thing a little bit bigger.
So I guess you were kind of like ramen profitable before you started thinking about kind of securing outside funding and going to accelerators and such, which is quite interesting. And so okay, and then you applied to 500. And I'm sure you applied to others, but what was that experience like? And what were, I guess, the key? Were there any pivots in the model when you went through a program like that?
Yeah, so there were pivots happened actually after 500. We applied to 500. We got rejected the first time, and actually we might have gotten rejected twice. To be honest with you, we applied twice, got rejected twice, and the third time we were like, okay, like what did we do wrong, and how can we actually get into this thing? So then we sort of like talked to other people that went through 500, and from our understanding there, it's all about like inbound referrals. So like when someone applies and no one is really vouching for the company, you have a much lesser chance of getting accepted than people who actually actively like refer you or vouch for you. And I didn't know any of this, right? Now that's like obviously common knowledge if you're in the startup world that like if you want to raise from a particular investor, you need a warm introduction. But that didn't make any sense to me then that that's how business works or how things operate. I had no business background at all. So the third time, we basically went through our LinkedIn. We were working out of this co-working space in the city, and there just happened to be this other company called Pigeon, who they were like a e-commerce brand or whatever. They went through 500, so we begged them for a referral, and then we just went through our LinkedIn, found other people that were like either connected to 500 or like whatever, and asked them if they would want to chat with us and just tell them about the business. So we just accumulated probably like 8 to 10 referrals to our application. And I think that what I heard when we got in was that like they were just getting so bombarded by people that were talking about Lawtrades that they were just like, this is getting really annoying. We need to just let them in. Like it was to the point where like we just like overdid it, and they had no choice but to basically let us in at that point. Whether we were good or not, I'm not sure at the time, but that definitely helped.
It's almost like a war of attrition at that point. That's quite interesting. And so coming out of what was that kind of, you mentioned there was a pivot kind of right after. So what was that like, or what was that major change?
Yeah, so right before we applied to 500, that's when we converted the business model into more of a marketplace. We just didn't have the resources to be able to facilitate payments in real time for legal work, because you essentially, it requires productizing services, which is insanely hard to do, and make it to the point where you can buy legal services in the same way you buy something on Amazon and deliver to you like instantly and transparently or whatever. So we shifted from this subscription-based service that was sort of like this like appointment booking tool to more of a marketplace. So now people can connect with each other. They can get matched algorithmically. I still don't know how to sort of pronounce that, with like code, without us sort of being the middle person. And then lawyers can now sort of create payments between and bill clients through it. So that was the pivot right before 500 that eventually got us in. I think at this point we were probably doing like $5,000 to $10,000 a month in like probably less than $10,000 a month, but it was kind of happening more in sort of like a recurring way rather than in a one-off way. And there was some organic growth sort of happening. We got into Product Hunt, which was new at the time. That sort of drove in a lot of like users, early stage startups. And the major pivot that sort of took place after 500, and actually, frankly, after we sort of like raised our seed round, we realized that we were sort of building completely for the wrong market, and our unit economics didn't work, and we had to sort of do a major pivot afterwards.